Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited about our topic today because I think it is one of the things, if not the thing, that is the most critical to a business for them to be successful. And that's branding. And it's always fun talking with people about branding, whether it's on the program or just out and about, because so many people don't understand what it means. So many people, oh my gosh, don't even think they need it, which is just, oh heavens, I can't believe that. But, it is something that is absolutely critical. And so joining us today is Mark Gutman to talk about this. So welcome, Mark.
Deb, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am equally as passionate as you about this topic and so excited to be here and have an amazing conversation. And hopefully we can teach the audience a thing or two about branding.
I love it. And, it all comes down to exactly what your hat says. It is about being brilliant, right?
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah, it really, this hat came out of an experience with my young daughter, Ruby. And I look so forward. I drop her every day off at the bus and off at school. And I just started saying to her one day, be brilliant. And she turned around at me and said, no, Dad, you be brilliant. Oh. And when I thought about what that really meant, that didn't mean, go to school and get all A's. That didn't mean, be at the top of your class. But what it did mean was be you,
right.
Shine in your essence. And that really is what branding is all about. And we'll talk about that today.
I love it. And, my grandmother was Ruby. So, we're just, and you live in Colorado. So this is going to be a fantastic conversation. We're just two peas in a pod. So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will do a deep dive on this. So from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, we are influenced by branding. What shirt am I going to wear? What car do I drive? What deodorant, marketing firm, beer, and so on. There's a lot of noise out there. Oh my gosh, tons of noise. And standing out isn't easy. Starting his career in screenwriting with Academy Award-winning director Oliver Stone, Mark Gutman blends storytelling, psychology, and design to help brands outmaneuver their competition. An entrepreneur, speaker, and Instagram social media influencer, Mark helps build brands that stand out and get you noticed. So again, Mark, welcome.
Oh, Deb, thanks. Whoever that person is you just introduced, I want to meet them. They sound great.
I know. Don't you love it when we read our own bios? We're like, ooh, that sounds good. But part of that is branding, right? It is how we are seen by the world and how the world sees us. So, one of the things I always like to start the program with is hearing about how my clients got to where they are today. Oh my gosh, working with Oliver Stone. I mean, all sorts of things. So tell us how it is that you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Yeah, well, I'm just some regular kid from Detroit. I didn't grow up in the movie business. And growing up in Detroit, a lot of people are surprised to hear me say this was awesome, but nothing ever really happened. It was pretty basic, pretty good. And, my whole contextual lens for the world was through TV and movies. That was my generation. Things were really starting to happen and converge in terms of the way that we were able to access movies. I loved going to the cinema, but then also we had, the TV was bringing things in like HBO, which to all you young listeners out there was like the first Netflix or whatever. Super cool. But, and there was also really a way how I connected with my father. We just had this mutual love of movies and we'd hang out. And so when I left college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All my friends were becoming, respectable lawyers and doctors and doing that stuff. But I thought, you know what, I'll go out to the movie business and I'll give that a try. I was
Mhm.
pretty naive, which I think is the number one characteristic of any
Right.
young
Mhm.
person or entrepreneur. Like you just got to
Mhm.
kind of believe, and not think about what can't happen.
Mhm.
And I got out there and kind of developed my first core philosophy in life, which is, you know, if you want something and you want to be a part of a industry, if you want to be a part of a career, it's find a way to get in the middle of that
Mhm.
industry. Now, it might not be the exact job that you want. It might not be perfect. And it wasn't for me. My very first job, I showed up. It was a warehouse in Van Nuys. I was like, this does not look like the Hollywood I saw on TV.
Mhm.
And I was going through security doors, and there were like kind of half-built robots, and like people were working on things. I was like, this is crazy.
Mhm.
And what I realized that this was the skunk works for Disney's Imagineering, where they're building all the
Oh.
animatronics and all the things
Mhm.
from Disney World. But I walked into another door that opened up into a massive theater, but there was no
Mhm.
one in the theater. There were no
Mhm.
seats, just a massive wraparound screen. And
Mhm.
that turned out to be a really cool kind of wraparound movie for Epcot Center. And it was
Ah.
3 panels of 70
Mhm.
millimeter. Ellen DeGeneres was the star. I'm not kidding you. Very first day of work, just got to California. I sit down Indian style on a cross-leg style on the floor, and we're eating lunch, and it's like 6 of us, the editors, me, and Ellen. And you know, I didn't say much.
Holy cow.
I didn't say much at the time, and you know, Ellen and I aren't like best friends or anything, but that was what happened.
Mhm.
And what that job was I was a runner, and I would
Mm.
deliver film
Mhm.
from this area in Van Nuys to Technicolor and Deluxe, and most
Mhm.
importantly, the Disney lot. And I had a lot of time to kill. And I would walk up and down the hallways and the bungalows and
Mhm.
befriend different producers and stick my head in their office and tell them what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And very much like in a movie, one of the producers one day slid a post-it note across the desk and said, call this number. That happened to be Oliver's number, which was really cool. I got the job as a story editor.
Mhm.
It was my dream job. I didn't know what a story editor was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Mhm.
It definitely was trial by fire. I thought I was going to get fired almost every single day. But I learned a ton about storytelling.
Mhm.
I learned about how to, you know, what makes an interesting story, how to read
Mhm.
scripts. One day, I walked into the office and everyone was kind of gathered around and looking very glum. And I was like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Like
Oh. Mhm.
my time has ended. But instead, they presented me with probably my most prized possession, which is in
Mhm.
the very background there.
Mhm.
My most prized trophy in business. And what that is an LL Bean tote bag
Ah.
that has the name of the production company on it.
Ah,
And
you were
what that was,
official. Mhm.
I was official, and that was the ritual. And what that
Mhm.
meant was I was now allowed to carry 20 scripts back and forth every day. I had the privilege
Mhm.
of carrying 20 that I had to read, and you know,
Mhm.
every night. And so stayed on there for a while, ended up
Mhm.
writing a few shows for them, unproduced movies, went on to do work on some other
Mhm.
films and things like that, primarily in comedy. Wrote cartoon series for Warner Brothers, a spinoff of another movie. But
Mhm.
you know, I realized at that point that I had learned a ton about storytelling. I
Mhm.
loved the movie business, but I hadn't really seen much of the world. And part of my dream had always been to come back to Colorado. I knew
Mhm.
from a very young age that this was for me, and I was going to live here someday. So I came here to take a break, never left.
Mhm.
And one of the things that kept me here was there was this another amazing event in my life where there was this confluence of all these crazy entrepreneurs and people here in
Mhm.
Colorado. We had this amazing startup scene. And I was like, well, I kind of saw the Hollywood people. They were cool. And no offense to you Hollywood people, but
Mhm.
these entrepreneurs, they were cool. They were
Oh
like seeing
yeah.
the
Mhm.
world. They were like doing all sorts of amazing things. And so I kind of got into that scene, and a lot of people were constantly coming up to me and
Mhm.
saying, can you help me tell my story? And I was like, yes, I can do that. And
Mhm.
we'd go off and we'd work and do that. And it like ended terribly, like most engagements, because we had a very different definition of what telling a story meant.
Ah.
I came from a very kind of classical training, right? Three
Mhm.
act cinematic
Mhm.
structure. And what I didn't realize at the time was all these, and they didn't know it either because it wasn't called this. These people wanted their brand story, right? But they didn't
Mm.
really know what that meant. They
Mhm.
just know that they weren't communicating clearly, they
Mhm.
weren't being perceived correctly, that, you know, something was off in their brand. And, you know, and it would show up in, this is the way that branding problems typically show up, right? Like it would show up like, our website's not working, we don't know how to talk about
Mhm.
ourselves. Very, very marketing
Mhm.
tactical executions,
Mhm.
because they didn't have that foundation of
Right.
brands. So over time, I figured that, oh, this is what we mean by brand story, and it's not just
Mhm.
like one like narrative story. There's,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of things that go into it, and was able over time to do two things. I started a tech company, and I was really not the best entrepreneur, but I was great at branding and marketing. So we built
Mhm.
that up and sold it. But then also I had built this practice where you know, over trial and error, really discovered that, hey, we're a brand strategy and design studio, and that's
Mhm.
what we love doing, and helping people to you know, not just tell their story, but build their business, right?
Mhm.
Because at the heart of these businesses are a lot of people's dreams.
Mhm.
We're solving a lot of times a real problem for people,
Right.
and at the very least, we're just helping people have fun, right, and get
Mhm.
outside or do different things. So
Mhm.
you know, that's what I love to do. I'm really passionate about business.
Mhm.
I'm really passionate about brand being a component of the business.
Mhm.
We'll talk about that. It's not like, hey, just like, it's not about getting logos and pretty designs and things
Mhm.
like that, but it really is a foundational piece
Mhm.
of the business. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Perfect. I love it. You know, and I love that you talk about the fact that there's a story, but the story has to actually make people do something. You know, and I think that's one of the things that people kind of trip over is they have that great story. And sometimes it's, you know, the whole entrepreneur, I did this, you know, I've created the greatest thing since sliced bread, all of those various things. But then people hear it, they go, ooh, ah, and then they do nothing. You know, and so that's where the story really does have to actually get people to do something. You know, and I mean, there's a variety of things. It's not always give us your money, that's great, but you know, sometimes the story is tell your friends about us, sometimes the story is, hey, remember we exist. I mean, all of those various things. So talk to us about how people kind of craft those stories.
Yeah, Deb, so this is such a great topic and point. I love the way that you led into this and set this up. So one of the things when I was working for Oliver, I would have to do was I'd typically come in on a Monday and I
Mhm.
would have like 10 scripts on my desk.
Mhm.
And those 10 were typically from someone Oliver had met over the weekend.
Mhm.
And he had a really, because he was a veteran, he had a really soft spot specifically for veterans. He'd be
Mhm.
like, you know, he'd be like, yeah, if you have a script, I'll read it, whatever,
Mhm.
which meant I read it.
Right.
And what
Mhm.
I learned is that everybody thinks that they have a great story.
Mhm.
And everyone thinks that every part of their life story makes a great story. And
Right.
neither of those things are true.
Mhm.
And so the
Sadly.
big,
Oh, it's kind of
sadly,
hard on the
sorry,
ego, but
everybody. Yeah, sorry, everybody. And we were just joking around in the beginning of my intro. You were like, oh, that's part of branding. Well,
Mhm.
absolutely. There are specific stories.
Mhm.
I've got, I don't know how many, I can't even, 10,000 stories in my life. You
Mhm.
probably have 10,000. Everyone has
Mhm.
10,000.
Mhm.
In that intro, you shared like two, right? And they
Mhm.
were curated, they were
Right.
selected because I
Mhm.
want you to know something. So I think that's the first, when we're talking about storytelling and brand and in your business, that's the first thing I just want people to know is that
Mhm.
like not every story is applicable,
Mhm.
not every story is usable. And you really need to think about, to your point, what do you want that story to do? What's the
Mhm.
purpose? I actually keep a story journal
Mhm.
just for my own branding. I'm sure we'll talk about some like social
Mhm.
media stuff and things like that. I keynote speak, and
Mhm.
I keep a story journal about, okay, this is a time when I was sitting on the fence and I didn't take action,
Mhm.
right? And then I tell my story or whatever. This is a time where I was where you are today, right? Like where
Mhm.
I wasn't employing good branding, and I
Mhm.
was like doing making all the mistakes, like stealing copy from my competitors and trying to act like my competitors, because if it
Mhm.
was working for them, it would work for me. But then I flipped it around, right? So these are all different stories
Mhm.
that we can tell. How to choose which ones? I think you really want to know what you want to tell, and I think there's a few basic things that we
Mhm.
really want to communicate, right? We want to communicate why we're in business.
Mhm.
right? Beyond making a profit. So a lot of people call call us our purpose. We sometimes want to communicate our vision. Like what do we see as a future for this industry? What do we see as a future for this brand? What do we believe in? Right? Like what are our values? And I think Patagonia is like one of those amazing brands that does that like constantly. They really lean into that. But that's not all they communicate. Right? They tell you about product. They tell you about, the features and benefits. They take you on an experience. In our beliefs and values though, like, because, beyond an actual functional product, customers really want to align with brands they believe in, that have the same values and beliefs. There's always the origin story, the backstory, the brand story that you can tell as well. And these are all examples of stories that when I think of these like kind of like story blocks that are all kind of funneling into a cohesive kind of focus, but then that's what people refer to as their brand story. It's all these little things. And of course, we want to give case studies. We want to tell people to do. I've been criticized by some of my advisors and peers for not talking enough about what we actually do, like the results that we deliver. And that's important too. And as you know, there's a just kind of a fine mixture of how we bring all those stories. We don't want to, hammer any ingredient too much, but that's what keeps it dynamic. Another great storytelling axiom is we always want contrast, right? So whenever, you're kind of talking about one thing, talk about something else and develop contrast.
And it's tricky because so many people think, oh, I don't have a story, or more importantly, I just want to sell this product or this service, and it's not important. You just need to buy this from me. And we all forget that it is about building those relationships with people. There are obviously lots of products that we just go and we buy because, it's whatever on the store shelf or, all those things. But for the things that really matter to us, and it can even be, a dollar item or whatever, sometimes it is that story that you are thinking about. And that's where we tug at people's heartstrings. It's where we bond with them. All of those things. And I think when people skip that part or assume nobody cares, that's where they're really missing out.
Yeah, 100%. Look, in any given market, whatever your business is, there's kind of like this accepted price point, right? Like if we think about a cup of coffee, there's about $1.50 or $2 is the, probably today's accepted common price point. Now, if I'm selling cups of coffee, there's only a couple of ways that I can actually increase my profits. I can either push down on the cost to produce, right? I can try to lower my costs, but we all know you can only push down on that line,
right? Because then quality goes down.
Yeah, well, and also look at what's happening right now in today's business environment. Costs are not going down; they are going up. It's becoming a lot harder to influence that line. And usually, in any given market, there's room for only one low-cost competitor. I mean, there's always a room for a Walmart. There's always a room for a Costco. There's always a room for an Amazon. But the only way to really pull up on that price line is to increase the perceived value of a product, right? And then so you have someone like Starbucks who's doing that point. We have all these like Blue Bottle and all these crazy other roasters that are charging insane amounts of money for a cup of coffee.
Right. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, my dad paid 10 cents for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And they're pulling the perceived value up and able to raise the price, which gives them more profit. So when we think of it in those terms, your brand has a job, right? Like I say, your brand has a job, and that's to help you sell more stuff to more people, right? Over a longer time for more years. And so that's what we're trying to do with all this branding stuff, right? And that's what this is really about. And so, yeah, I have friends, and I've been doing a lot of work with Amazon sellers. I've been doing a lot of work with e-commerce people because they are able to have short-term success. They're able to go into a market and list on Amazon and use paid advertising and start to find a product to sell. But what is happening is there's no reason for people to come back and purchase.
Right.
There's no way to be defensible in
Mhm.
the marketplace. If they have like a great idea, someone
Mhm.
sees that also and drop
Mhm.
ships from Alibaba,
Mhm.
and they're in trouble.
Mhm.
And so really, yeah, the only way to, and Amazon's a search engine, right? So they're
Mhm.
searching and looking for low price. And you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. I go in there and sometimes I just need something, and it's
Mhm.
transitional product, right? But even then, a lot of times, which product am I buying? The one that says Amazon's Choice or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean,
Right.
that's a form
Yeah, there's
of
a little bit of a
branding
story there. Mhm.
within.
Mhm. Well, and we read the
There is,
product
but
descriptions,
so
and
yeah, 100%
we read the
reviews.
reviews. I mean, all of those, that's all of what builds the story and makes you decide, hey, I'm going to buy this, whether it's, the $10 item or, the something that costs more.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, as consumers, we're emotionally driven to brands,
Mhm.
and I want people to start thinking about and self-evaluating when you go out and you make a purchase. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, salt, it's a commodity, but I
Mhm.
pick Morton salt over
Mhm.
the Safeway brand, right? Why
Right.
do I do that? Because I believe it's better quality.
Mhm.
There's a lot of reasons why, but they've created a brand
Mhm.
in a commodity, and this ladders up to all sorts of different
Mhm.
products. When you think about, you buy a car, you're not like being sold.
Mhm.
You know that you need a car. You're like, I need
Mhm.
transportation.
Mhm.
You make a few decisions
Mhm.
about where you want to be category wise. Am I going to
Mhm.
be like a like an entry level
Mhm.
vehicle, middle, luxury,
Right.
SUV?
Mhm.
But then you go and you start to look at different vehicles and start to associate meaning to them, right?
Mhm.
Like if you're in this kind of like middle class, or I would say luxury SUV class,
Mhm.
right? You're like, oh, do I want a Volvo because it makes me safe?
Mhm.
Do I want a Jeep or a Range Rover because it
Mhm.
makes me adventurous,
Mhm.
right? Do I want a Lexus or Mercedes because it makes me refined? I mean,
Mhm.
these are the things. Do I feel powerful and successful?
Mhm.
These are the types of emotions and humanistic
Mhm.
qualities that we give brands that
Mhm.
influence our buying decisions.
Right. And sometimes they make absolutely no sense. And which is difficult from the seller's perspective. But some of it is that like you mentioned salt, other things like detergent. We buy Tide because mom always used Tide. I mean, all of these various things. But again, that is part of the story. And so you see when people really start carrying that through, they recognize that background is that, mom always did this, or, dad, this, and I was trying to think, and all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on it. It was, I think it was for a car, and it was that this is not your father's something. I don't remember the brand, which is obviously not a good thing,
Not your
but
father's Oldsmobile.
that was it. Yes. And
Yeah.
which is really funny because my parents always had Oldsmobiles. But yeah, that was part of that story. So rather than being, the family sedan, it was something that was very different. And so they played on that story.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the best brands know that, right?
Mhm.
And you mentioned Tide. I mean, they know that like good moms
Mhm.
use Tide, and they
Mhm.
want you to feel like a better mother for
Mhm.
using their detergent, right? And
Mhm.
they just keep hammering that home, and
Mhm.
we associate that with Tide. I mean,
Mhm.
that's kind of the problem. Here's a little secret for any smaller brands out there listening, because you're probably thinking like, oh, we're talking about big brands, and
Right.
how does
And
this
and
apply to my
millions of
business?
dollars, or at least thousands.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, here's the truth. I work with both. And while all these small brands want to act like big brands, the
Mhm.
reality is big brands wish they were like small brands.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that, and your example of Oldsmobile was great, because you start to get like pigeonholed into a certain
Mhm.
story. You start to
Right.
get seen as a certain type of brand,
Mhm.
and it is very hard. And I don't think they ever
Mhm.
successfully did it. It's very hard for a company like Oldsmobile
Mhm.
to turn that perception around. It's like turning
Mhm.
an aircraft carrier. Now it's
Right.
just like super slow. It takes a lot of
Mhm.
work, a lot of
Mhm.
money. And kind of the thing is, right? Like if you're not telling your story,
Mhm.
someone else is, right? And if you're not working on your brand and your brand perception, then you will be branded, right? And so
Mhm.
someone I know
Right.
likes to
Somebody
say
else tells your
brand or
story,
be
as you said.
branded.
Mhm.
Yeah. So everyone was telling that story of Oldsmobile. Hey, this
Mhm.
is for my grandfather. This is for
Mhm.
old people. This is just not a cool car.
Mhm.
Now, in marketing and branding and advertising, that's one strategy, to take the weakness
Mhm.
and hammer it home and say, hey, we understand it's a weakness,
Mhm.
and we're going to address it and turn it 180.
Mhm.
They didn't do it very successfully. You know
Right.
who did it great? Domino's. So I
Mm.
don't know if you remember, but a few years ago,
Mhm.
they literally ran commercials
Mhm.
of people eating their pizza saying, this is terrible.
Mhm.
This is horrible. It tastes like cardboard, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, yeah, we know.
Mhm.
So we're going to fix it.
Mhm.
Right. And then they did fix it.
Mhm.
And that resonated as
Mhm.
this amazingly authentic message and story
Mhm.
to the consumer. And
Right.
that's a great turnaround story of a company that was able to take that weakness, kind of refine their brand
Mhm.
story, which they had lost control of. They
Mhm.
had, and here's one of the things, right? I don't even know, because I'm kind of talking off the cuff here about Domino's, but I don't know what their purpose was, and I don't know what their values were.
Mhm.
But what we felt when the quality of the pizza started going down was that their purpose was not about making great pizza
Mhm.
or making me happy,
Mhm.
and their values were not about quality and weren't about
Right.
customers.
Mhm.
Right? They were
Yeah,
just,
it was all about
about
them.
shareholders,
Mhm.
right? What people care about
Mhm.
is, and what I implore businesses to care about is, you need
Mhm.
to care about stakeholders over
Mhm.
shareholders,
Mhm.
right? And those stakeholders being your customers,
Mhm.
your employees,
Mhm.
and the community.
Mhm.
And once you do that, it's this great effect where actually
Mhm.
the shareholders make more money.
Mhm.
But when the old model of focusing just on shareholders, actually we're in this weird
Mhm.
state in business where that doesn't really work well. And if it
Right.
does work, it doesn't work really long. It doesn't
Mhm.
work long term.
Mhm.
People sniff that out. They expect so much more
Mhm.
from the brands, right? And I think you and I grew up in this time where it was like a unidirectional conversation,
Mhm.
where Tide was like, I'm Tide, I'm for
Right.
moms.
Mhm.
And if you didn't believe them, you and I would grumble, but we'd have to be in person. There was no
Mhm.
Zoom, there was no internet, and we would be
Right.
like,
You
hey,
certainly couldn't
I don't
post on
believe you.
Facebook and mhm.
Yeah. Now that story's out in the wild.
Mhm.
The conversation is happening on social media. Your brand is being, discussed,
Mhm.
reviewed, brought up, torn
Mhm.
down. People are more worldly, right? They're seeing
Mhm.
different ways of doing their laundry. They have
Mhm.
different beliefs, right? Like I go now to my aisle in the market for laundry detergent, and it's like, not only is it about cleaning my clothes,
Mhm.
it's about my lifestyle. It's about
Right.
how I see the world. I
Mhm.
have detergent that's eco-friendly. I have
Mhm.
detergent that does this and
Mhm.
that, and more whites and less chemicals and more
Mhm.
chemicals and whatever
Mhm.
you want, right? And that's just where we're at in this
Mhm.
world. And so when I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but when we start thinking about what that story is and what
Mhm.
we want people to know about our
Mhm.
brand, it really is about getting super specific,
Mhm.
having a clear point of view,
Mhm.
and having a worldview that you
Mhm.
share with the world about how you're going to go about solving this
Mhm.
problem. Because there's not too many problems that are like new mousetraps these days,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Again,
There's nothing unique anymore. Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I like, and here's a shocking thing that I'll say is like, for most brands, I don't think people really care about the brand as much as the brand thinks they do.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, if Tide went away tomorrow,
Mhm.
would you be sad?
No.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
No. I
I'm a
might
Tide
think,
consumer.
oh, now I have to pick something different, but that'd be it.
Yes. My Apple computer that I love dearly, that's
Mhm.
making all this possible, if that
Mhm.
went away tomorrow, I'd find a way to survive.
Mhm.
I'd do something different.
Right.
I'd be bummed. I'd be like, remember we had
Mhm.
Apple? They were cool. What
Mhm.
happened to Apple? But I wouldn't be
Yeah.
losing sleep about it.
Mhm. Yeah. Now I use a pair.
Totally. So I
Mhm.
think brands also need to be careful about, the where they intersect with customers in their lives. Because even though I use my Apple computer every single day, I didn't wake up this morning going like, oh, I wonder what's going on with Apple. Right? Like, I wonder what's. I'm concerned about their brand. I'm not.
Yeah, and we see that all the time, where companies think that they are, and it doesn't matter what size they are, that they are irreplaceable, that they are the best thing in the world. It was funny, as we were chatting before the program, we were talking about technology, and I was saying something along the lines of, now we Zoom. And it really did surprise me at the start of the pandemic that Skype didn't leap in and say, hey, we've got this great platform. And oh, by the way, it's built on Microsoft. And so we've got, all of this stuff. And instead you heard crickets from them. And, and this little upstart of a company said, hey, here we are. Now, granted, they had, they'd grown a pretty good following, but for me, watching from the outside, their best move was when they said, schools can use our technology for free. During the pandemic, schools can use our product for free. And then, if your kid was using it, well, you might as well use it too. And all of those things. And, so Microsoft might have thought Skype was going to do well just because it's a Microsoft product, but they let that little upstart get in there and say, hello. And now it's, it's like several of the other words that we've had, or products that we've had through the years. It's now a noun, a verb, an adjective. I mean, all of those things in basically 20 months. We don't tell people, let's connect virtually. We say, are we going to Zoom? Or, hey, I'm Zooming right now, or, all of those various things. And it really does go to show, if you're complacent, you get bypassed by somebody who's not.
100%. I think a big part of branding in the work we do is identifying, what do people really want, right? And what are unmet needs? And, no one's going to really tell you that,
Right.
No one's going to be like, I don't think they know their unmet needs. Although I think in the example of Skype, they could have figured this out, because my thought on Skype is, it started this kind of like funky consumer product, but when Microsoft bought it over the years, they started layering in more complexity, right? Now, I've been invited to Skype a couple times recently, I'd say in the past year. Like, it's not that easy. I got to find my Microsoft username.
Oh yeah. I don't even think I have it on my computer anymore.
Yeah. I'm not a big Microsoft user. I can't figure it out. And so what Zoom did is they made it really simple, and they kind of followed that Apple playbook from so many years ago, where Apple was doing the same thing. They were giving discounts to get into the school, get people to use the products. And same exact thing. And I think this unmet need is like, look, we just want to have a real simple, easy to use video conference. And it should, and the thing about Zoom is they keep adding, more features, yet they keep it very, very simple. Like, I'm looking at my interface right now, and it's just like, it's not hard, it's intuitive. And I think that they did a great job there, right? And that was an unmet need we had. We had the technology, we had the tools, but up until this point, like desktop video conferencing was just too complicated, and they fixed that.
Right. And it's funny, because I don't even know if they have a story. It was just, okay, we're just going to start using Zoom. I mean, that was kind of the funny thing about this. But there are certainly other examples of companies that, they were the upstart. They were the, hey, pay attention to us. And that's where it's important to the small business owner, the one person type of companies that are thinking, I am competing with the big guys, and so nobody cares. But a lot of times, and I think more so, we're seeing people are kind of wanting to go back to the basics. I mean, we're certainly seeing a lot of the conversations about buy local, buy small. And, granted, we're approaching the holidays. And so that really has been something that's coming out there. And now there's the twist on it of, there's the supply chain issues. There's, all of these various things. So if you just go down to your little mom and pop place, you can buy what they've got. Is it what you were looking for? Maybe, maybe not, but you're helping that small business. And so you never know where, you're going to be able to compete And so that's why, again, it is so important as that small business to have that story, to know what your brand is, as opposed to, I can sell you anything you need, just tell me what you need.
100%. I mean, the cornerstone of branding is, why should anyone care? Like,
Mhm.
why should anyone care about my business? Like, why
Right.
am I relevant? Right? Like, why do I matter
Mhm.
to you as
Mhm.
a buyer?
Mhm.
And that's what it's really, really about when we talk about the story. And
Mhm.
yeah, we have so much choice, but the good news is, to all these small businesses, is that human tastes are always changing,
Mhm.
right? Like our tastes in movies are always
Mhm.
changing. That's why you see movies go spend $100 million and flop, right? Because
Mhm.
it's just when Hollywood thinks,
Right.
they're one of the smartest storytelling operations in the
Mhm.
universe. And they make mistakes, because right when
Mhm.
they think they've got it figured out,
Mhm.
we change our taste,
Mhm.
right when a big brand thinks they have it figured out,
Mhm.
we change our taste. I'll give you a good
Mhm.
example. I'm working with a food company right now, a big frozen pizza brand, and they've been doing frozen pizza for 20 years.
Mhm.
Well, and it's been very, very successful. Well, you know what? What's keeping them up at night is a small upstart pizza brand that feels all local, kind of
Mhm.
quirky, cool design on the
Mhm.
box, like the pizza's irregular, has burnt crust, because that's
Mhm.
what we have now
It looks
decided
like you
is
made it from
cool.
scratch.
Yeah, exactly. But that wasn't cool. No one wanted that 20 years ago. You wanted a
Right.
perfect looking pizza.
Mhm.
So, and, that, and that company is making, the new company's making huge inroads. They're a
Mhm.
small company. They're
Mhm.
competing with a multinational global company,
Mhm.
and it's keeping the multinational global company
Mhm.
up at night.
Right.
So, I mean, to all these small businesses, the
Mhm.
opportunity is always there.
Mhm.
I think what, is always so important when we talk about branding and companies is, like, what's the need that you're meeting
Mhm.
that your competitors can't
Mhm.
can't can't deliver? Like, what is the competitor doing? And sometimes
Mhm.
in some real obvious cases, yeah, it's like, hey, you've gotten complacent, you've gotten
Mhm.
kind of lazy. You're giving me a product from 20 years ago, and I'm going to come in, and we see that all the time,
Mhm.
right? We saw that with Uber and Airbnb. It
Mhm.
wasn't like, you know, the idea of having a rental wasn't new, but the idea of renting out your personal space and
Mhm.
having, and feeling like a local in a city,
Mhm.
that was kind of new.
Right.
Same thing with Uber and
Mhm.
Lyft and things like
Mhm. Yeah. And sometimes it really is something unusual. There's a company down here that advertises on local radio, and they're an IT consulting firm for the little guy, and so it's, basically it's for businesses who don't have in-house IT folks. Their primary selling feature is 24 hours a day. If you call them, the call will be answered within 15 seconds by a person. And so that hits several buttons for a lot of people, especially when you're talking about an IT company, because you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to call and press 1, press 2, press 3, press, oops, got hung up on, all of those various things. And so what it makes, I can't tell you how many times I have wanted to just call just to see if they really do answer the phone within 15 seconds. And I'm pretty sure that they do, because if they don't, that's going to be very well known very quickly. Even if it's just like 20 seconds or 30 seconds, somebody's going to get on Facebook, they're going to get on Instagram, and they're going to say, but that plays to one of those things that people care about. They want that personal attention, and they want it now.
Yeah, and that's an unmet need, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and before we started recording, we talked about, you had read that a popular publication was discouraging and saying, do we really need avatars?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is yes, you do. I
Yes.
believe you do. And this is very much the reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you start to like identify who's your target customer, you're like, okay, we want to identify, small to medium
Mm-hmm.
businesses and with our IT services, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a billion IT service
Mm-hmm.
providers. That is not a new service.
Right.
How they provide that service is probably not new,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they start to build out that avatar, and they start to think about fears and desires,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, you know what? These small businesses, and maybe part of that is you go and you talk to, small businesses, you do some interviews, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
look, when I think of IT, no one answers my call. I go through the menu tree.
Mm-hmm.
I need help fast, but I can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the light bulb goes off, and that you do that through an avatar exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Light bulb goes off for that company. Like, great. No one is providing 15-second
Mm-hmm.
answering times for small to medium business.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're able to say, look, that's our difference. We are the
Mm-hmm.
only IT firm that provides 15-second pickup for
Mm-hmm.
small to medium business. That is a core way of developing a positioning strategy.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really get into that, but your position is the
Mm-hmm.
space in the mind
Mm-hmm.
that you occupy in the mind of a prospect or customer. And they're now known as the 15-second answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that like a big innovation? No. Is
Yeah.
that something that they invented or had that no one else could foresee in the world? Absolutely not. But that is an amazing position. It's an amazing way to differentiate yourself, to be distinct from your competitors. And then, of course, that becomes a core part of your brand story, which is, hey, this is our difference. But also, hey, customer, we get you. We know what you care about.
Right. And then it is important to have that follow up. I mean, it's not just somebody answers the phone within 15 seconds, because if somebody answers within 15 seconds and says, please hold, I'm not happy, or they say there's nobody available to take your call, or any of those various things. I mean, it is, it's that progression of things. And so that's sometimes I think where people get caught up. They're going to say, but it's back to Domino's, we deliver within 30 minutes. Well, sometimes that didn't always work. And of course they learned it didn't work, which is why they don't do it anymore. But yeah, it was okay. What comes after that 15 seconds? How are you still continuing to tell that story?
Yeah, well, you have to be great, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we're living in a world where whatever what you deliver is has to be great. Like, I have to give great brand strategy and design. I can't give you mediocre stuff, right? Unless I'm like some low cost provider, but then you're going to get, you're going to have that. If that's your model, it's going to be mediocre and average. And then people are going to go online and say it's mediocre and average, or I'm going to have to cater to a low cost, high volume kind of clientele. Right.
Right.
And that's just, to your point, that's the world we're living in. Like, everyone gets online, like your reputation, it takes, what's it saying? It takes a lifetime to build and a second to destroy.
Yep.
If you don't do that. And so, you absolutely have to deliver on, hey, we got 15-second hold times, but then we also get you to a person and we deliver on that promise, or else you're not going to be in business very long. So you can go on the internet and go on the radio and tell everyone you have 15-second hold times. But if you're not living up to that promise, that'll be destroyed pretty quickly.
And it can be destroyed quickly. I mean, 2 words, Aaron Rodgers. It's
great example.
Yeah. It's interesting from a marketing and PR perspective to watch this whole thing play out. And many people don't care. Okay, fine, whatever. Many people think, he deserves what he's getting. Many people think, oh my gosh, this is horrible and awful. But yeah, I mean, it really did not take much from him to completely cause problems. Is it going to destroy his brand? Who knows? But how it plays out over the next even couple of weeks is going to be what's important with that. And I think the problem is so many companies do think they can, it's not important. They can weather those storms, and I talked with someone not long ago about the importance of, paying attention to those online reviews and how, especially as a small business, one bad online review can bring your whole company down. It's about how you respond and all of those things. And so and that's what's hard, especially for small business owners, is this is something you do have to pay attention to 24/7. It's not just, create it and leave it. It's something that's always out there.
Yeah. And I think, the best thing to think about in reviews or social media or the greater internet is that it is a vibrant, living conversation. And it's not this kind of like unidirectional, like plastered on a wall. They're not static. They live and they breathe and they evolve. And fortunately or unfortunately, they also are there as the world around us changes, right? So you think of all these people who had posted things on the internet and things like that. And when cultural perception and energy and momentum changes around what's okay to say, what's appropriate, people go back and crawl, find out what you said.
They'll find something you posted 10 years ago
and hold you accountable today. And I'm not here to debate whether it's right or wrong. But like that's the world we live in. And so being aware of that, right? And being authentic, and also being clear that you're going to live into your brand for better or worse. I mean, as long as you're not being completely offensive, and actually, I'll take that back. Some brands
sometimes that is your brand.
But being polarizing is okay, right? And if you lean into what you believe and stuff like that. But what people typically won't take is either inconsistency or dishonesty, right? And that's kind of like what happened with Aaron Rodgers, right? He was both inconsistent and dishonest, and that's why he's getting kind of held to the flame right now. And I don't blame people.
And there are so many people who, especially whether it's a celebrity, an athlete, whoever, they're looking for reasons to say, hey, this is a bad person. And so it's hard for them. But yeah, I mean, it's just, like I said, from a PR and marketing perspective, it's been an entertaining kind of, as you said before, case study to see how it works. And then you toss in his girlfriend and I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just, there are certain, there are always times where I think I'm really glad I'm not their PR people, because I'd get fired because I would.
And I'm a little more optimistic than that. I'm a little more optimistic than that. I think people are so mad because they invested in Aaron, right? They believed in him. They believed his story. And there's nothing worse than when you kind of get that reveal, whether it's in, with a person like Aaron Rodgers, or whether it's a brand and you feel like, oh no, I've been lied to. Right. Because when we believe in a story of Aaron Rodgers, we believe in a story of Nike or Patagonia or Volvo, like we're taking that on as part of our identity, right? We take that on as part of our belief system. And when someone says the thing that you invested in, the thing that you brought into your own aura, persona, and belief system, I lied to you, that hurts, right? And we're unforgiving creatures when that happens, and that's the way it is,
right? Yeah, and that's where it is so important to have that strong basis, to have built that up, all of those, so that you can weather those storms. And sometimes it's, sometimes you can't. I mean, let's just be honest about it. But it does help to have that plan, have that brand. And you have something on your website that I absolutely love. And I was reading it, and you have a manifesto. So tell me more about that. And more importantly, why should companies have a manifesto?
Yeah, thanks. A manifesto is just one piece of the puzzle. And just to expand a little bit and build a little bit on what you just said, Deb, yes, you need a plan. So what does that plan look like for us? That's what we call brand strategy, right? And we do all these fun things that we call working on the internal brand, like your purpose, your vision, your mission, your values. We work on your positioning strategy, who's the audience, your competitors, your difference. We work on these things like your brand persona, your personality, your voice. What are your core messages? What's the storytelling framework? Then we get into names and what everyone loves, the identity system or a logo, right? And why do we do all that? Well, we don't do that in a vacuum. We document that, and that becomes a playbook for things like we're just talking about. When you're weathered with a storm, when you're questioning, how do we respond? So that's really what it is. It's documented and articulated and shared by an organization. The manifesto is just an amalgamation of all that stuff. And really it's a belief statement. It's a way of writing an anthem that says, this is why we're here. This is what we believe in. This is what our company is about. Because what we're talking about, all this right here, it's really the only way you can differentiate. You know, I'm
Mhm.
a service provider. There are other people
Mhm.
that offer branding services.
Mhm.
You know, I want to believe that I'm the best in the world, but like, let's be honest, there are a lot of people that
There's
are
one
great
or
at
two
branding.
more that might be.
Yes, yes, and they can help you just as well.
Mhm.
But so, you know, we differentiate ourselves with, you know, a target audience, with our
Mhm.
positioning, and then a manifesto just becomes this amazing rallying cry
Mhm.
around that you can build as an anthem. I
Mhm.
usually like them too, because when we write them, that's when you start to like really feel the brand. That's when
Mhm.
you start to have emotion around the brand, and you can
Mhm.
start to pull out things that you never would have written, in
Mhm.
terms of maybe you find a tagline there, maybe you find a core message,
Mhm.
something like that. And so it really is this anthem of, you know, putting the flag in the sand. I actually have a whole webinar and a what we call a manifesto builder,
Mhm.
that I think you can either link to through the website, but if not,
Mhm.
I'll make sure we get that to you,
Okay.
Deb,
Cool.
and you can link to that, so that
Mhm.
anybody that's interested walks them all through
Mhm.
kind of history of manifestos, great manifesto examples, as well as how to actually
Mhm.
build your own with some really
Mhm.
fundamental building blocks. You can go out and write your own manifesto.
Right. And as I'm reading yours, it really is something that, the one person in their spare bedroom can develop, as well as the big multi-gazillion dollar companies. It's clearly one of those things that people have to sit down and think about who they are and what their values are, all of those various things. I mean, here's let's see, this is a couple sentences from yours. We are here on this planet to après. And that's, people are going to go, what the heck is that? And then it says, it's the time we dedicate to refreshing our strength and our spirit, so we may reconnect to who we truly are. Remember what's truly important. It's a time to connect with family and friends and to have conversations that matter. It's a time to connect with family and friends. You've got that sentence in there twice. To create the moments that matter, to laugh, and to adventure. And people think, well, what does that have to do with business? It has everything to do with business, because it's talking about your philosophy of who you are as a company. And I think it comes back to what we were saying at the very start. It's not just, hey, we have to make lots of money. And yes, we have to make money or we don't succeed. I tell people even nonprofits have to make money. It doesn't mean no profit. It means, but but it's about how we go about it, that is important. And that really is what sets us apart. It's, the 15-second answer. It's the, we always use environmentally sustained products, all of those various things. And as we were saying, people care about that. They're shopping for those things because that's what's important to them.
100%. And a little sort of inside baseball, we work with a lot of lifestyle and
Mm-hmm.
outdoor brands. And so part of that manifesto is really to say, like, this is what we believe in. We
Mm-hmm.
believe in products that
Mm-hmm.
support lifestyle. We
Right.
support products that are about families and friends. And
Mm-hmm.
like, that's a way for us to expand, like, hey, if you have a cool water bottle,
Mm-hmm.
if you are a travel company,
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about that now.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and there's people probably listening being like, yeah, but I don't want to be so narrow and blah, blah, blah. We get people all the time, B2B companies. I was just on a
Mm-hmm.
workshop this morning with a B2B managed services provider. We're helping them with a brand, but that's not our identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't help us narrow our focus in terms of who we're talking to, our marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and what we stand for. So, to those of you that are worried, like, hey, I don't want to be so specific. Look, you can still take other business, but
Right. Yeah. You're not going to say, no, we don't like your money. I mean, or you
exactly,
could,
exactly.
But that is, it really is, the what gets you going in the morning type of story. On another part of your website, you mentioned the fact that, when you were a young child, you asked your dad, do you like your job? And your dad went, yeah. And and at that early age, you thought, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. And we all hear the thing that says, if you love what you do, it's not really a job. Well, you know what? You still have to do parts of it that you're not going to like. I always laugh and I tell people I don't like invoicing, but I better be good at invoicing. And so there's always parts of it that aren't the thing that you love. The nice thing is, you hopefully can reach a point where you delegate those things out and you get back to what you love. But that is part of that story. I mean, it's figuring out what gets you up and gets you going in the morning. Is it, is it that you provide, that 15-second response time? Is it that you provide, outstanding customer support? All of those various things, as we were reading in your manifesto, it's about knowing that your families are so important. It's about, giving back, all of those various things, because that is what makes people think, hey, this is somebody, maybe it's not a product I'm going to buy, but it might be somebody I'm going to tell somebody else about, or all of those things.
Yeah. And, look, the big takeaway here is it should just be personal to you, right? And it shouldn't be manufactured. And for us, it really is important. We live a very Colorado lifestyle. We love branding, we love business, but we're here because we're really about all those moments with our families and friends out on the slopes or doing other things. And so, but that's what's important to us. I will say that your manifesto doesn't have to be about saving the world, doesn't have to be, about anything like that. Fiat has an amazing one that's all about just, the joy of the love and joy of driving, right? And they kind of go into this whole awesome narrative about it's just about being having a love for driving, you're an Italian, right? And that's what theirs is about. And you're like, oh yeah, I love that. I could drive a Fiat, that'd be cool.
Right.
So, be authentic, lean into yourself, and know that thing that you believe in, those differences, that manifesto is the one thing that can really make you distinct and tip the scales in your favor in terms of a purchase decision by a prospect or a client.
And one thing that people always need to remember is it also tells people this might not be for you. Maybe I don't want to be driving like I'm an Italian, and I, because I'm the mom, I need the minivan, and so that's also important, because you don't want either, as the company, you don't want to be wasting your time with people that are never going to buy from you, but you also don't want them wasting their time. So it's perfectly fine to kind of weed those people out.
Yeah, just as important. It's always good, to know just who you're for as much as you're not. So that's a great point.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Mark, we've only got just a couple minutes left. And this really is a subject that I could talk about for hours, because I think it's fascinating. It's fun to talk about. But as we said, it's very important for businesses. So we'll just have to have you on again sometime. But until then, tell us more about, and we didn't even mention your company name. Your company is called Wild Story. So tell us about the services that you provide and how people find you.
Yeah, we are Wild Story. We're a brand strategy and design studio. And, not many of you are probably waking up saying, I need brand strategy. That's a real problem of mine. But typically what we work with are people, they come to us, they think they have a logo problem, they think they have a website problem. They might be saying something like, we don't know how to tell our story, or we're not standing out from our competition. Those are all things that we help people with, typically with the underlying foundation of brand story. You can check us out at wildstory.com, but I've also made it really, really easy for you. You might be in the car, you might be running, you might be doing something different. So if you just want to go ahead and send us an email at goodstuff, GOODSTUFF at wildstory.com. You can just put Power Hour right in the subject. You don't need to put anything in the body unless you want to, and we'll go ahead and reply right back to you with a lot of these assets and resources we just talked about on the show. Make it really, really easy for you, and we'll get that to you, and you'll have the option. You can follow me on social media, learn more about branding. We'll get you the manifesto builder, all those types of assets and tools. We'll just put them right in your inbox for you. Good stuff at wildstory.com.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. And it's like you were saying, sometimes simple is the easiest way to go. We get so caught up in it has to be fancy, and it has to do this and it has to do that. And it's like, nah, let's just be simple. We've got so many things. We mentioned this at the very start, so many things bombarding us. It's got to be simple or we don't remember. So this has been absolutely fantastic. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
I think that the final thought that I'd love to leave you with is just remember that branding is all about selling, and that your brand has a job. That job is to help you raise the perceived value of your business. And why do we want to raise the perceived value? So we can get more profit and have a better business and, drive profits to the bottom line. I'll leave it
Perfect.
at that.
I love it. Well, I have been having an absolutely wonderful discussion with Mark Gutman of Wild Story. I'm Deb Creer, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.